It's the end of day 6 of Jewel of Arabia. We've made another good day's progress heading south through the Sharqyia Sands. We've done about 26 kilometres today. Amour and I on the camels, and the rest of the team going around doing some filming, going ahead doing some wrecking in some routes. We're currently located about 40 kilometres away from the shore of the Indian Ocean. It's too far for us probably to make tomorrow. The camels are starting to tire significantly when we go uphill. So we think, another 25, 26 kilometres tomorrow, and then that'll leave us a half day until we reach a community called Kehaid on the coast of the Indian Ocean. So our current location is 21 degrees, 25 minutes north, 58 degrees, 52 minutes east. And the sun's just set to my left and to my right. A moon that is probably only a couple of days off full, I think, is already up in the sky. So we're probably not going to see too many stars tonight because that moon's going to be burning quite brightly. But today's been a day of slow travel, really. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. And Thesiger, who was probably the most famous of the desert explorers, and the man that we're following, Bertram Thomas, both wrote in their books, Thesiger's book Arabian Sands, Thomas's book Arabia Felix. Both of them wrote about the monotony of the long march, hour after hour after hour in the saddle. I mean, not monotonous for us because there's so much to see actually, but for them, their journey distances were much larger, and the amount of time they spent on their camels was much longer than us. And I was very envious of Thomas today because the people he travelled with laughed at his desire for what they considered to be an over-the-top saddle, a more British riding saddle. But I can fully understand, after about 4 hours of riding myself today, I can fully understand why Thomas insisted on using that saddle, because it would have been infinitely more comfortable than another rather painful day in the saddle for me today, but not as bad as yesterday. You do get used to it as you're going along. So Amour and I tend to break up the walking and the riding. The camels really do struggle uphill, and you know what, coming downhill when you're bouncing around, it's pretty painful. So it's good to have use the camels on the open stretches of desert where things are a bit easier for them and easier for us too as the rider. But the joy of travelling by camel is, of course, you go much faster than you do on foot. When I'm walking, I'm probably doing about 3.5 kilometres an hour. When we're riding the camels, we're doing probably about 6 kilometres an hour. So it's quite a substantial difference. So it does make, it does enable us to cover sort of the end of the day, sort of somewhere between 6 to 9 more kilometres towards the Indian Ocean than we would if we were just progressing on foot. But that slow travel really does enable you to be much more immersed in the world immediately around you, to live in the present rather than looking ahead and looking at your watch when you're driving a vehicle, perhaps. And there's so much detail to see in the sands. Around a scorpion track, so Amour was showing me today that the tracks made by scorpions, which of course are very different to the tracks made by gerbils and jerboa, and which again are very different to the beautiful, smooth, curved lines through the sand of snakes, of which there are plenty here in the desert. This desert is absolutely alive after those rains with all the vegetation. And the prints also of dung beetles, and it's quite amazing watching dung beetles pushing camel poo, round balls of camel poo, which often are twice the size of the dung beetle itself, and they always seem to be pushing them uphill. So it's great to see all that stuff, and the patterns in the sand drawn by the grass and the sedge being moved by the wind. There's so much detail to see. And if you go onto our website, jewelofarabiaexpedition.com, you'll see a video clip. There's a section of the website called Inspiration, and we called it an oasis of inspiration. And on there you will see two fantastic British adventurers and explorers, Leon McCarran and Alistair Humphreys. You'll see a short video clip of Alistair and Leon talking about how to put a landscape into words. And I recall when I watched what Alistair very kindly sent us, that he suggested that you really have to remember to try and use all of your senses. And yesterday, I think in the podcast we spoke about the sound of the desert, the occasional waft of wind, the fact that we could hear a swarm of bees about 100 metres away, the hoopoe lark, the wheatear, the raven, but that's about it. The overwhelming sound of the desert is the silence. And there's not a strong smell of anything really. It's apart from the camels and us, and we're probably fairly aromatic now, having been on the go for 6 or 7 days without a proper wash. But good progress, and nonetheless today, plenty of time to look around as we plod along, and we came to a small little shelter in the centre of the desert. It's an emergency point where Bedou who running out of petrol. There's the occasional barrel of petrol there left there, so we went there, had a cup of coffee with a lovely Indian man who keeps that little place going. 6 kilometres away, we couldn't see it, but there's a school that the Omani government built for the Bedouin children to travel to school to get an education. Which doesn't surprise me, really. The Minister of Education here in Oman is the most extraordinary lady, Dr. Madiha Al-Shibani, and wow, I mean, we're looking at the planet Jupiter in the sky right now, and Dr. Madiha is a lady that has a brain the size of Jupiter. She's so smart and intelligent, and education in Oman is in very safe hands with her. So there was even a school deep in the sands. It would take you an hour to get out of the desert to any direction from that school. So it's probably the most remote school in Oman. But at this time of year, there aren't any children there. It's exams time in January. So there was little point in us travelling across to it. So we continued south, and scuttling around behind us, in front of us, Nigel, Ibrahim, Anna Maria, Dikra, just driving two fantastic four-wheel drive vehicles, both Land Rover Defenders, but in sync with our journey following a 1927-28 route by Bertram Thomas. We have an old Land Rover, which is my own, which is about 20 years old. The Omanis call it Abu Fatila. It's a Defender 110. I've had it for 10 years here in Oman. It enables me to go wherever I really want to go in the desert, but thanks to our very generous friends at Mohsin Haider Darwish, the Land Rover dealer in Oman, we also have the new generation of 110 Defender, which is a beautiful vehicle also. So these two vehicles enable us to really do whatever we want to do. They've got full-length roof racks because we've got a lot of food, a lot of water, a lot of equipment. We're also carrying fodder for the camels. Actually, not that we need to, because there is so much grazing in the desert, and it doesn't seem to be getting any less as we approach the sea. But these vehicles, of course, the vehicle's only as good as the driver, and driving through sand, there's a real art to it. It's not easy. What is easy is getting stuck. So there are a few basics when it comes to sand driving that I'll share with you now. And I first learned to sand drive probably 30 years ago when I lived in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and I was lucky to learn off some legendary people there, David Brown and Jean Brown, Terry Phones and Glenise and Dave Abbott and Donna Abbott. And these were people, when I arrived in Saudi, I'd lived in Bahrain. So I've lived in the Middle East for 25 years really, but several years in Bahrain, which is no real desert there to worry about when you're driving. But then I moved to Riyadh in the heart of Arabia in Saudi Arabia, and there you have the biggest sand desert on earth, the Rub al Khali, and I was desperate to go and explore. I'd read Wilfred Thesiger, Arabian Sands. I wanted to go to the desert, and I was so keen. And a very kind lady, Jean Brown, said, look, my husband David, he's out in the desert every weekend. Come with us. We'll take you camping and we'll show you what to do. And so I learnt. I went on a sand driving course with a fantastic group of people. And of course I got stuck before we even got to the place where we were going to camp on day one, before the course began, because I was a total novice. And just watching Amour in the sand. I mean, we have Anna Maria with us and Nigel, both fantastic skiers, spend a lot of time in the Alps, and people who spend time in the Alps develop an eye for what is safe and what is not, what snow is likely to avalanche and what snow is not. And for those people that don't spend a lot of time in that environment, you can't see that. But now we're travelling through Amour's environment. It's where he was born, and if you watch Amour in a car, he never stops, he never pauses. He can read the sand ahead, immediately in front of the car, 100 metres ahead, and yet he's also looking a kilometre ahead to navigate the way to go. So reading the sand is a real art, and being able to determine what is soft sand and what is firmer, harder sand is very, very difficult. Sand goes quite hard when it rains, and we did see a rain cloud yesterday ahead of us, and sure enough, when we reached that point after about 5 kilometres today, there were little peck marks in the sand to indicate that a bit of rain had fallen yesterday, but not enough to turn the sand red, which is what happens when it rains. And when it does rain, that sand goes quite hard. So actually driving in sand after rain is very, very easy. But it hasn't rained here really for a few months. But when it did rain, then it rained pretty hard, which is why we had the greenery. But the sand is back to its normal state, really. And so to travel through sand, a few basic rules are that if you're traveling through softish sand, then take some air out of your tires, and the softer the sand, the more the air you have to take out of your tires. And you can do that, you don't need any technical equipment to do that. You just need a matchstick and your watch, maybe 45 seconds on each tire, and the result of that will be that the bottom of your tire in contact with the sand will be bigger. You've got a bigger footprint, so you're less likely to sink in, you're more likely to float over the top, and there's less resistance for the car to move through. So deflating, very important, but therefore you need to be able to reverse that. So carrying a compressor that you would connect with bulldog clips to your battery to pump up your tyres when you come to the tarmac at the end of the desert or the gravel, the harder gravel, because you don't want to drive quickly on deflated tyres, because that's going to damage the walls of your tyres, and when you do reinflate them at back to high speed, the potential for a blowout on weakened tyres is very, very high. So you need to take safety very, very seriously out here. Also, you have to remember when you're on deflated tyres not to do any sudden turns of the wheel, because it's very easy then to pop a tyre off its rim, and getting that back on in the middle of here is quite a challenge. So you don't want to do that. And then driving through sand, you can't drive slowly. You do have to drive a little bit faster than normal. Keep your revs a little bit higher to glide over the top. And the important thing is not to, again, comes with experience. It's not too much power that when you come to a dune, you're going to go flying over it like the Dukes of Hazzard and damage your vehicle, damage your shock absorbers and your springs and your equipment inside. It's getting enough power, control power, to get up and over and then down the other side. And stopping is where a lot of people get it wrong. You really never want to stop facing uphill, because you will not be able to pull away. You'll just go down and you'll be stuck, and your vehicle then will need to be dug out. So we always try and park downhill, and if you're going to pull away, if you do have to park facing uphill, then your way out would be to go backwards and reverse. And use gravity. Gravity is your friend. But if you do get stuck, then the gear we have each vehicle has a sand shovel, a long-handled sand shovel. That means you can reach underneath the vehicle to dig it out if you have to. Each vehicle's carrying sand tracks. Each vehicle's carrying a long heavy-duty tow rope with a heavy-duty shackle either end to connect to the two cars to the rope. So, with all of that gear on board, we've got enough to travel, and then it's just a matter of getting used to the vehicle, which is something that Nigel and Ibrahim have done very quickly. I mean, the two cars they're driving are very, very different. One's manual, one's automatic, one's brand new, one's 20 years old, but, Land Rovers are Land Rovers. They are absolutely fantastic, and they are the vehicle that you want when you're travelling off road. So I have no worries that these vehicles are going to get us to the Indian Ocean, and that will probably be the day after tomorrow. So more tomorrow, but hopefully that just shares a little bit about our journey today. I think tomorrow it'll be our last full day on camels in the sand, so I'll probably do a little bit more walking tomorrow and let Nigel and Ibrahim and Anna and Dicker, if they want to, get up onto the camels and experience the quite unique experience that I've been experiencing over the last few days.